Well, well, well. Ange Postecoglou. We'll shut that barbecue, shall we? Mate, it's not good news if your name's Ange Postecoglou, or is it? I'm going to crack open a beer for him, because cheers, Ange. You're finally out of Tottenham Hotspur, which, if I were you, that is a good one. What is this? Scrimshaw, North Coast Brewing Co., independent since 1988. Yes, guys, Ange Postecoglou has been sacked as the manager of Tottenham Hotspur. And I'm not going to lie to you, I find it really difficult watching Ange in the dugout at Spurs, because as much as some of the football that he plays is complete and utter lunacy over a 38-game season, the man deserves some flowers for the fact that he won Tottenham their first trophy in 17 years, doing something that I would have considered pretty unthinkable. To be quite honest, there wasn't a single part of me, take the bias away from it whatsoever. I did not think Spurs could win a final the way that they did. They dug deep, defensively, they were resolute, and they found a different way to play, and it worked, and it got them their first trophy. And Daniel Levy has taken a look at that, and of course the fact they finished 17th in the Premier League, and he said goodbye. And in this video today, I want to talk a little bit about what this tells us about football in general. I could sit here all day talking about how I don't like Tottenham Hotspur, because that's football, right? I'm a Chelsea fan, and we pick and choose the clubs that we like, the clubs that we don't like. There's historical rivalries, then there's personal vendettas that people might have. And for Chelsea, it's usually Arsenal, Tottenham, and then you've got the historic rivalries with Liverpool, Manchester United, Millwall, West Ham, Leeds. But for me, it's always been Spurs has been the main one. But I'll say this, right? Tottenham Hotspur finishing 17th in the Premier League. I'm pretty sure, I don't want to speak for Spurs fans here, let me know in the comments down below, but winning that trophy must have meant so much to Tottenham fans, to the point where they have had so many managers, top managers, come through the door at that football club and try to win something. And the Europa League, right, it's not a joke of a trophy. It's a bigger trophy than the one that Chelsea just won, the Conference League. It's harder to win. The quality of the opposition is harder. And I would also argue that despite Spurs having a relatively straightforward run to the final, to actually keep winning all of those matches with all of the injuries that they had this season is an incredible feat from Ange's side, because the league form was a disaster. But I feel as though it got to a point for Spurs last season, they realised that there wasn't anything salvageable from the season. And when we went into that final, looking at both Tottenham and Manchester United, it was like Premier League embarrassment, and one of you is going to salvage this season and it's going to be considered somewhat of a success. For Manchester United, the fact that they lost it meant that the fact that they finished so low, 15th in the Premier League, was even bigger of an issue, because they couldn't even win the trophy and were so feeble in that final. Whereas for Spurs, that trophy was the holy grail. They haven't won anything for nearly 2 decades, and then Ange Postecoglou, after having the audacity to remind us all that he always wins things in his second season, to actually go and do it deserves so much praise, so much credit for Ange. It tells you now about football that winning trophies is not the be-all and end-all. It isn't the pinnacle anymore. It's about the league form. And for Daniel Levy, it's 100% the league position, 17th, does not equate to the financial money that he would want it to. So therefore, is it right to keep Ange Postecoglou in a job? Absolutely not. And I'll be quite honest with you, I think this is probably the best outcome for everybody, to be fair. And I think the only stakeholder in this situation that probably isn't very happy is probably the Tottenham players. There's rumours right now that the players are absolutely fuming because they loved Ange. And for those players that have been at Spurs for a while, Heung-min Son, Davies, the players that have been there and understand what the club needed, which was to lift some silverware, to get medals around your necks and lift that trophy, do that parade, which credit to Spurs, they did a great job with that parade, I'll give them that. But for them, this was, the league didn't matter. It doesn't matter to them. Daniel Levy it matters to, because he cares about the finances of the club. I think moving forward, I think if Ange would have stayed, great for everybody else, because I think Spurs would have struggled again. Will they actually spend money that is needed and necessary now that they're a Champions League club again? Probably not. Does Daniel Levy mind too much about where the club go from here? I'm going to say no, and I don't know too much about the ins and outs and ongoings at Tottenham Hotspur, but from what I do know, over recent years, has getting Spurs to the very top been at the forefront of Daniel Levy's mind? Absolutely not. Ange Postecoglou, in the mind of Daniel Levy, had done everything that he could have done. And for Ange, I think leaving Spurs is the right thing to do, because you leave with your reputation absolutely sky high. If they would have started next season and had a bad run of form early on, it's immediately the same as what we saw at Manchester United. Man United would have always been better off getting Ruben Amorim in at the start of last season, whether it was even tenable or not. Eric Ten Hag starting last season for Manchester United was a disaster for them. Yes, he won the FA Cup, and then Sir Jim Ratcliffe, Ineos, they're all looking at it like, oh, what do we do with this guy? Like, he's just won us an Okay, go on then. We'll give you the start of the season. Lo and behold, it was the wrong decision. And I think for Tottenham, if Ange would have stayed going into next season, football is a fickle business, where what happened yesterday is irrelevant, because you've got to look forward now and you've got to think about the next game. And I think Spurs have acted very quickly, but even so, maybe not quickly enough. 2 weeks this guy has been just wondering, am I still going to be Tottenham manager next season? We've just won a trophy. Should I still be having a couple of tinnies and celebrating that? Is that the end of my Spurs reign? If so, oh, I'm going out on a high, all right, because that is an incredible win. But for Ange, I think he'll get another great job. I think there's already a lot of top European clubs that are supposedly looking at Postecoglou as an option. I don't think he should stay out of work. I think he should absolutely ride that wave of yet another trophy. And he's also got next season to fail, because it's the second season that he wins things in. But for Spurs, where do they go from here? The talk at the moment is Thomas Frank. And I'll be very honest, as much as I don't like this, because look, Chelsea, 4 wins out of 4 against Ange Postecoglou's Tottenham Hotspur. It's easy. You know what you're going to get. They're going to play this ridiculously high line. Chelsea got the pace to counter in behind, and we're always going to beat them. I'm always confident Chelsea playing against Spurs. But if Thomas Frank is the manager, this guy gets teams playing. The way that Brentford have been since they came up to the Premier League is an absolute testament to the managerial class of Thomas Frank. Now, I really like Thomas Frank. As soon as he goes to Tottenham, I don't like him. But it's the same as Ange Postecoglou. Now that he's no longer the Spurs manager, I will happily come here on more GBFC and tell you I really like the bloke. I think he comes across sometimes a bit naive, potentially, but then again, I don't think there's a single football manager that doesn't come across that way. I think every manager, even the top ones, will say things in interviews that I'm like, why have you said that? I think you're absolutely wrong. Do you even believe that? I think that is the biggest thing in football. When you're watching a presser, you're listening to a player, you're listening to the manager, you're like, do you actually think that? Or was that the briefing and that is the easiest way for you to not be caught out or to get less people to read into? Do you know what I mean? Like, there's so much of that in football these days. You can pretty much predict everything that someone's going to say. But with Ange, it was so raw. It came across like you could sense the frustration this season with the Premier League results. And I think towards the end, there might even have been this element of surprise. Tottenham Hotspur are the club, remember, that sacked Jose Mourinho the week before a cup final that they obviously didn't win. Like, it's not as if thinking about cup finals and cup managers and, okay, we could do better if we got this guy. That doesn't really cross the mind of Daniel Levy. He's a businessman. I don't really think he's a football guy and trying to win. It's all about the money. But they stuck with him, and Ange delivered on his promise. And I think as much as right now in football, like, I'm looking for any reason to bash Spurs, I really am, because I love it. That's what it is. That's what rivalries are. That's what tribalism is. When your enemy suffers, you revel in it. But with this one, I'm like, I'm disappointed that he's been sacked because I want to see Tottenham suffer. But I'm happy for him because I think at another club, I think he'll do very well. And I think he will be a manager that will win cup competitions. I think a great job for Ange Postecoglou, if I was to pinpoint any club, it would be like one of the Red Bull clubs. I think going to RB Leipzig or RB Salzburg with a project there where they've got young players that can be nurtured, that they want to play expressive attacking football and all of this stuff. That's the kind of job that I expect Ange to go into. And I think people will endear to him very quickly because he's a very likeable guy. And when the football works, let's be real, it can be breathtaking to watch at times. But at Tottenham, ravaged by injuries, which again, I think a lot of that could be down to the intensity and the way that they play. I certainly don't think it helped. Not that it's 100% a definitive reason. I think moving forward, Thomas Frank coming in, I think it will take a while. I don't think it will be first season Spurs are back up there challenging. I don't think Spurs will finish in the top 6 next season, but Thomas Frank will absolutely organise this team first of all. Brentford, they often concede a lot of goals, they score a lot of goals, but the way that Thomas Frank gets his teams to attack is by being smart in the final third, waiting for the right opportunity to shoot, and they've got the players that have the quality that can do that. I think players like James Maddison will absolutely thrive if Thomas Frank is the manager. But today, I wanted to talk about Ange because it's a big story. I say cheers to Ange Postecoglou for finally being rid of Tottenham Hotspur, because I can actually go back to liking the man again now that he's not the manager of Spurs. But I hope you've enjoyed this more GBFC conversation about Ange's sacking at Spurs. I'm not going to say where I think they're going to finish in the league, but I don't think Tottenham get top 6. Regardless of who comes in as the manager, Spurs aren't getting top 6 next season. You can clip me up, you can remind me of that in a year if they manage to get the Europa League and then make it. They're not, Tottenham aren't winning the Premier League. It's absolutely not happening. But anyway, subscribe to more GBFC if you are new, and cheers to the weekend. Have a good one. See you later.